Well, that last kit, my Titanic, took a long time to build, and I thought I'd build something a little simpler this time, hopefully, anyhow. And I said I'll just build a car. Now, I don't build traditional cars, nothing wrong with that. There's a lot of modelers who do that, but I like something a little more funkier. And I got this Beatnik Bandit by Ed Big Daddy Roth. Now, Ed Roth was this guy who built these custom cars for show, very fancy looking, all these unique fiberglass pieces, and won multi awards and things like that. And of course there's a lot of vintage kits from those cars, and this one is one of them, the Beatnik Bandit. I got it at a swap meet, and the seller told me, well, there's no decals in there, the decals. And it didn't bother me. I just said, they're kind of intricate, hard. They look hard to put on. But when I got the kit home, I realized that what happened was there was just one little slice missing from the decals. I'm not too sure what was in there. I think these were just two strips that went down the side of the fender. So most of the decals are there. To be honest, this is the hardest part of the kit. I'm not sure I'm gonna use them. I'm gonna try. What I'm gonna do is I had a paint scheme in mind where I used the kind of like a pearl, which is kind of what this car is anyhow. It's tan, a glistening color. So I have this pearl paint I want to try. I'll try it on a sample first, and then I'm gonna try the hardest sticker over here, or at least I think it's one piece, and if I can get that, then I should be okay with the rest. So we'll see. One thing I noticed, and unfortunately in the old days they did not put the tires in separate bags, and in this case one of the tires kind of made some markings here, so I'm not even sure if these decals are good. But again, it's the hardest piece, so if I can get that off, maybe we'll be using them. Other than that, I'm going to build this stock. It's a cool looking car as is. I might do something with the seats. I don't like them, the same color as the body, making maybe red or reddish. It's a bubble top. When I got the kit, the plastic was, still bagged, and I opened it up. So I think all the parts are there. I didn't go through them. It looks like they were all there. The bubble top over here isn't perfect, but I think I can buff out some of these imperfections. And again, it looks like it was one of those tires sitting there and basically making notches into this plastic. But I've seen there's some techniques to really basically buff it out, believe it or not. So we'll see how that goes. Other than that, the motor is quite intricate if you look at the instructions, more than usual, because again, that's part of the allure of the car itself. It was a really fancy motor. So you can see the full first page is just the motor over here. So after that, I think it's simple enough. One thing that interested me when I was looking through the instructions over here, it looks like there's a lot of parts that you don't glue, including the wheels. So the wheels may turn, and also the rod that connects them, can't remember where that was over here. It looks that that's not glued, so the actual wheels may sway together. At least that's where it was. Where I can't find it now. Anyhow, yeah, the tie rod over here, it's not glued there, so that thing might actually move the front tires. Anyhow, we'll give it a go, and hopefully this kit won't take as long as the last one. See you there. Okay, really quick update over here. One thing I noticed about the kit is that it has a lot of spare parts, some that I can understand and some that I can't. One thing I noticed when I was taking apart the looking through the sprue and stuff like that, was this seat that was really cool, had seat belts and everything, and I said, oh, maybe that's an option. But these spare parts are not mentioned anywhere in instructions as alternates or whatever. And even looking at the seat, you can see it's a lot bigger than the normal seat. Now there's only one of these and two of these, so I'm wondering maybe you can put, or the intention is you can replace the two with the one over here. I'm just not sure. Another one is this piece over here. It's obviously, a replacement for this rear here, but no mention of it is made in the instructions at all. So again, that's something to keep in mind when you're building the kit, to take a look at these parts and figure it out. And then you have other pieces like this that, it's huge and it's not mentioned anywhere, and I can't imagine where you would put this in the kit. So that was one thing. Another thing I noticed is that there is some incredible detail. Like, look at this cams and things like that they have molded, which is really nice. But in a car, it's going to be covered up with the oil pan, right? So I don't know why they bother doing that, unless somebody's going to build a model where somebody's working on the engine. But anyhow, I just thought it was really interesting. I'm not sure if this is normal with car kits. I mean, I built car kits way back in the day, and I never seen this kind of extra detail that's going to be covered up. Anyhow, coming along. Okay, some progress and a minor setback. As you can see, I've already primed more or less everything over here and started some of the painting. The darker stuff primed with black and the lighter stuff with white. Started working on the motor over here. Again, a lot of detail is just going to be lost as you put the parts together. And I'm at the point now where I'm starting looking at the instructions to say, am I working on something with detail that I'm just going to end up covering up later, so I shouldn't worry about it too much? But it's coming along nicely. One minor modification I'm going to do is, this is the distributor cap they give you over here. You can see it's got little points on top, and I like to wire it, and I could not use my little hand twist drill bit to go into the peaks of those points. So I just made my own distributor with using a piece of sprue here and then drilling in the holes. I don't know if I can focus in on there, but yeah, it came out nicely. And I think the blue wiring, it's the wire gauge, 30 gauge wire wrap wire. I think it'll look nice with the motor because it's kind of translucent wire. Anyhow, enough about that. The problem I had was with the painting. I was going to use one of these sparkly or metallic paints. I didn't buy them in the store. Actually, they came from like a thrift shop that had a whole bunch of these for like $2. So I just picked them up, and they do look nice. The problem is when I put them in the airbrush, especially this one over here, it just clogged up my airbrush to the point like even now I can't unclog it. It's not a problem. I do have other airbrushes, but I don't know what to paint, what color to paint. I thought about just leaving it white and then giving it a coating of clear, because perhaps the decals will be on there later on. I don't know if that's going to work or not, but because I'm unsure about it, I might do something radical. I might actually go with this pink over here, because if I do the pink, it'll look freaky for the car, but from the era, that's fine, and it kind of goes with the decals if I want it, if I can, and I'll try the decals. So I'll see if I go with that. I'm just looking at all my other paints, and I don't see anything I really like that would make a good combination, especially if I go with the decals. So a little up in the air about that, but aside from that, we're making progress. Okay, quick update over here. I ended up just shooting white, Tamiya white on it for paint, so I'm gonna give the decals a try. We'll see how it goes. So I checked it out when it came to the pink. I finished most of the chassis over here. Went all right. There was a few tricky parts, but I did have a problem with some of the two parts, which is really the radiator hoses. Now they give you these really thin metallic chrome radiator hoses, and even though everything else seems to fit fine, when it came to positioning these, because they're contoured, they didn't quite fit over where they were supposed to go. So what I ended up doing was I made my own. I said it was a very shiny motor, and I couldn't find any wires that would fill in as the tube, the right diameter, the right gauge and everything. So I just used some copper, and I thought the copper worked really well with it, and just shaped the copper wire to replicate the hose, and it has a contrast in the different metals used in the motor, which I really liked. Thank you, Rambler 69, for this idea to have the little pointer over here. Hope you can see that. Anyhow, it worked really well. And another thing I did was I finally got some Molotow liquid chrome, which I know a lot of car modelers use, all the time. But it's since I don't build that cars that often, and especially need the chrome, I did want to get this thing for one purpose, not so much to do like trim or handles, which I will be using it for that in the future, but also I hate it when you cut off pieces of chrome pieces from the sprue, and sometimes where it's attached to the sprue, it's not going to be hidden, so you'll see that little white plastic or whatever plastic they're using for the actual model itself, the color. In this case, it was white, so you can see all these little white splotches in a lot of parts where you can see it. So the chrome marker really worked really well. This is a 2mm ones. They're different sizes. This is a second smallest size, and it's just great for just going in there and dabbing the places you need to cover up, and it worked great. So that's it for now. Welcome back, and I want to talk about decals, or decals as some people call them, and sometimes I call them decals. I mentioned that I was reluctant to use these because the tires from the model at one point sat on certain parts of these decals while they were in storage in the box, probably for years and years, and I could see the tire prints. So I was doubtful that they would work, but I was going to try, and I did. And I tried with this biggest piece over here, figuring if I can get this one that has the tire mark, I should be okay with the rest. And sure enough, as soon as I put it in the water, the warm water, like these flaps here all separated, but right where that tire mark was, it was just stuck onto the paper. I literally left it there for half an hour, and even a half an hour later, they were still stuck. So these were not going to be, I couldn't use these. As it so happened, Steve, the Model Minion, a local modeler over here who has a great YouTube channel, had built this same Bandit, and he did not use his decals. And I mentioned that, and we talked about it, and he offered me graciously to use the ones that he had put aside. And I accepted. So thank you again, Stephen. I'm going to be trying these next, and hopefully they work. I'm going to do the same thing, try the harder parts, and if the harder parts work, then I should be okay, because I don't want to put a strip and then find out the other ones don't work. You'll notice right away that they're not exactly the same. I thought actually he had the same kit because of the box shown when he built his was the same box as mine, or so it appeared. But you can see there's a slight difference in size, and also some of the other attributes. For instance, these are a little thicker. More or less, the pieces on mine are a little thicker, and yet, they're the same. They fit on the same car because, the lengths and things like that are more or less the same. You can see the opening here, the aperture on the side panels for the doors. Mine is a lot smaller than the ones on this set over here. These are obviously newer, and they look to be in pristine condition. So hopefully I won't have an issue with them. Again, it is a challenging set of decals to put on, but I'm gonna go for it. I'll give it a shot, and we'll see how that works. Another thing with these older sets, you have to be careful. The numbering over here, their bits, they'll come off in the water, so you'll have these little floating black pieces. But again, it's irrelevant in my case. But if anybody does have these older sets, be careful when you're cutting them out. Make sure you don't have these, the numberings that goes with it, or all this other stuff over here. So I'm going to give it a shot, and we'll see how it goes. And now you've probably all been wondering about the million-dollar questions. How did the decals turn out? The answer is not too bad. They weren't perfect. I did have a few issues. But again, I tried with the hardest part first, and it went on beautifully. a few, you know, they're it's not perfect, but I can see the imperfections, but from far away you won't notice. One thing I had to change was a bit of the layout. There's supposed to be three over here, and there was no way I was going to fit that middle strip in there. It was just too wide to fit, you know, in between this one and this one, so I just moved these ones a little higher up. Um, to compensate. Again, if you didn't know it was supposed to be a third strip there, you wouldn't notice any difference over here. One thing to keep in mind when you do put these decals on is there's this piece over here. This is one big piece in the back, and there's the two side pieces. They are made to align right over here at that point. So make sure that you put these right up until the edge over here, and then you can just slide to this part right so where it meets up over there, and then everything's okay. I'm very happy with them. Again, they're not perfect. I look at them and I see the issues. The biggest issues I actually had was not on the body itself, is to put them on the fenders over here. It was kind of tricky. I was looking at the instructions because the instructions mentioned that there's a strip in the middle, which I did have, the wide strip, and then there's two on each side going up the top, the front and the back of the fenders. And what happens here is these pieces over here you can see on the old decal set. They're really curved, and they're designed so that when you put them together, this inner edge will meet up with that inner edge, and because the contour of the curve on the piece itself, they should align perfectly. And that was a little tricky to do. You can see I have a little more success here and here than here and here. I had a little more problems on one side, and they're really tricky to place them. So when you do that, you are gonna use a decal setting solution like Microsol or all the other variants. So be prepared with that. Again, there was a few places where the alignment wasn't perfect, and you can see like either a light gap or actually like kind of a few bubbles over here. I'm going to go over a few more passes of the Microsol, but not too bad. I also took a little paint and did a little paint matching to just a little dot a few places where you can see a little white, but overall not too bad. You can see that I also here was an example of a strip that would have had to have fit in the middle, and there was just no way unless this would go over the edge, and I didn't want that to happen. So again, thank you, Steve, the model Car Minion, for these, and very happy with that. A quick thing I want to talk about is, again, I mentioned I had to buffer out some areas on the canopy. I'm not finished over here, but I did buffer out too, using gradient of watered down sandpaper, starting with 1,500, 2,000, 2,500, 3,000, 5,000, and 7,000 in a liquid solution water. And I do have a little more buffing out to do, but it looks already much better than it did before. So we'll finish off with that. And we're getting close to the end now. Okay, just a few things I want to touch up on as we approach the end. The first thing I wanted to talk about was I found the steering piston over here that I thought I'd lost. It was a little tricky getting it back in there after the fact, but I was glad I found it. It's basically a more complete model. I thought I'd lost these little very small fine pits. There's two pieces over here for this canopy retainer and piston is what they call it. And I don't know if you can see that. It kind of like dangles down there. And there's really very small piece that goes right in there. Like this, almost shaped like a whistle. I don't know if I can zoom that in there. There it goes. Anyhow, so you got to there's like a little place where that fits in, but you only glue one side, not the other, because this piece here the piston has to move, because it's going to be going up and down as the canopy raises and lowers into these little small holes on each side of the body over here. So I recommend using the best way to get that in place was actually to use a little rubber band so it wouldn't move around, and then gluing them in place. So Worked out fine. The last piece, there's only a few bits left. You know, the steering wheel that they have, these little sharp pointing things that go at the front, and the hinges for that canopy, which you have to do from the underside, and I'm going to use some blue tack to hold it in at the right angle, and then do both of them at the same time, because this has to fit in as in those holes, those pistons, and then they have to be glued so that this can go up and down like that. So we're getting there. One thing I want to mention about the decal that I modified, because I could not get this one in the middle and the side one at the same time. There wasn't much room. And my bad is I trusted the sheet for the placement of the decals over here, and you can see this one in the middle, it stops short of the end, and that's this big fat one that I ended up putting kind of in the middle between the two places over here. What I realized afterwards is this decal is supposed to go over the edge and onto the front, and if doing that, this part is a lot thinner in the middle, because you really move it up forward. And then I would have had enough room to put the little side ones there. So again, my bad. I improvised. I usually use a lot of reference photos before I build, and I had a lot of reference photos of the car itself. And I realized after I'd done this that, oh, this was supposed to go over the edge. But again, this was my fault, was really believing, you know, this decal placement sheet in the instructions, where it is incorrect. So be careful of that if you're building it. One thing I did is there's a kind of raised dial that goes on the car, like a speedometer, tachometer, whatever. And I couldn't really paint that in there, so I just went on the internet, got a whole bunch of dials, put them all to one size in Inkscape, made a whole row, and then made a few other sizes, just a little bit bigger, 5% bigger, 5% bigger, 5% bigger. And then what I did is I printed them all out on one sheet, and then found the best match to go over here, and just use some Mod Podge under it to glue it in place, and then a little layer on top to secure it. And at least I'll have a nice looking dial as well. So we're getting really very close to the end now. We'll see how it goes from here, but so far so good. And here we have the final model. Again, it was pretty much what I'd hoped it would be. Not perfect, but I learned a lot, and I'm glad I did it, especially with the decals from Steve. I did take another page out of Steve's book, and I made a suitably sized copy of the May 61 Carcraft magazine over there, with the Beatnik on the cover. So again, I'm glad with it. It does pop open. Well, that's a little tricky, and you can see the interior. Nicely done. So it took longer than usual, which is my norm. I'm just a slow modeler, but I'm glad how it turned out, and I've already got the next one lined up, so we'll see what that one turns out to be. Like and subscribe.